Alright, good morning, class. Today we're going to be doing some more math. You guys will be being taught by me. I want you guys go to page 10 in your modules. Remember your new module 2, page 10. Let's see. But before we actually do any math, I just want to go over a couple things, some behavior things. So make sure the sub actually should already have told you guys this, but maybe they didn't. Make sure during when these videos are being played, your job is just to pay attention, take notes, and you can ask the sub to pause it if you need to finish taking the notes, or if you need to maybe have a question, maybe someone can answer in the class, or if you have a question, you can always email me if there's something confusing. But you should not be talking to a neighbor or talking to anybody during the video. That's all your job is to do, is just to watch the video and take the notes. And there'll be times where I have you do work, you gotta do the work. This should not be fooling around while I'm gone. I also let the sub know to let me know students who are fooling around, talking, disturbing the classroom. And I'll make sure those names that I see, I will call your parents and let them know what's going on. So make sure you guys are on your best behavior. Alright. I know most of you guys are, but just want to make sure everybody is on their best behavior. Alright, so to get started with business, page 10. So page 10 was your homework yesterday, and you guys should have saw it in the Google Classroom. Your job was to finish that page, right, and take a picture of it and submit it to get points. I'll be grading that soon. However, there'll be some times where I'll kind of help you guys out, like today. I'm actually going to go over some of these problems for those of you guys who you've had trouble with some of them. If you were a little confused, maybe you can. I'm helping you with that, and you can add in what I'm writing down to help to add to your paper so that you guys can turn that in for points. And if you guys already got the answers, you can check your answers to see if they match up, right? So helping you guys out here. Because at the end of the week, you guys will have a quiz. We'll have the week quizzes just like normal. Okay, so again, page 10. Some of these problems are a little easier, so I'll go through them a little quicker. But let's see, looking at the first one, it says you have two cards of a sum of negative 12, right? Just quickly do that. Let's see. So again, have your page open. I'm not gonna make it there with all this. Okay, but let's sure. So you have two cards of negative 12. It says what two cards could you have? There's a lot of different answers here you could put. But let's see. So let's say, remember, we always have 0, right? Let's say we go back 6. That'll be negative 6, right? You go back another 6. Guess what? You're at negative 12. So two cards you could have gotten were negative 6 and negative 6. You could have said something else like, let's say you go back 8. I'll take you to negative 8. But then you need to go back 4 more. That'll get you to negative 12, right? So negative 8 and negative 4. That's just another answer that works out. So you guys might have something else as long as those two numbers adds up to negative 12 or it takes you to negative 12. Part B says you add 2 more cards to your hand, but the total sum of the cards remains the same. Negative 12. Give some different examples of the 2 cards you could have chose. So, real quick. So if we're at negative 12, right? It says you pick up 2 cards, but then you still end up at negative 12. So what you could have gotten was, let's say if I get a 5, that would take me to negative 7. But then if you get a negative 5, guess what? It takes you back to negative 12. So something like that is 5 and negative 5. Because what did we talk about yesterday? If you have a number and it's opposite, these are opposites, right? Or if you have a number and remember the keyword additive inverse, just like the word opposite. If you have a number and it's additive inverse, what happens when you come add them up? It just equals 0, right? So if you're adding 0 to 12 or negative 12, where are you going to be at? You still stay at negative 12. Let me do another quick example. So again, let's say you're at negative 12, right? Let's say you have a 10 or negative 10 and a positive 10. If you're at negative 12, you go back 10 more, you'd be at negative 22. But if you have a positive 10 now, you go forward 10, guess what? You're back where you started. So the answer for part B is any two numbers that are opposite, right? For example, 5 and negative 5, or negative 10 and positive 10. You could have chosen anything, as long as those two numbers are opposites of each other. Because when you add a number and it's opposite, you add to get 0. And if you're at negative 12, you add 0 to that. Guess what? You stay at negative 12. Alright, part B says choose one card value and its additive inverse. So I'll just use the same number from the previous problem. Let's say I got 5 and negative 5. Right here it says choose from the list below to write a real world story problem that would model their sum. So I'm just going to briefly talk about each of these. I won't write it out because there's going to be a lot to write out. But let's say elevation. So you could say Mary walked 5 feet above sea level, or took 5 steps up, right? So she's 5 feet above sea level. Right? But then after that, she walks 5 feet down. Guess where she's at? Back at 0. So that could be an example you chose. Or for money, it could say you put $5 in your bank account, and then the next day you withdrew the $5, so then there's $0 in your bank account. Remember, withdrew is to take money out. Deposit is to put money in. So I'll repeat that. Let's say you deposit $5. That means you have $5 in your bank account. And then you withdrew $5, that's a negative 5. Guess what? That makes you have 0. Temperature, pretty similar. Let's say it's 0 degrees. It got hotter by 5 degrees, and then it got colder by 5 degrees. Then guess what? We're back at 0. For football, let's say if we're at that's not really a 0. I guess it kind of is a 0, but you don't really start at 0 in football. But let's just say, for example, you're at 0, right? You gain 5 yards. That's positive 5. But then on the next play, you have to run back and you get sacked or something. And you go back 5 yards. You're back at 0. So that kind of sums up any of those 4 examples. Make sure you write one little sentence for any. You don't have to do all 4. You just choose one of those, like the way, I did all 4. But you choose one of those and make sure you write it if you have not already. Again, you guys are going to turn this in for points. Number 3 says on the number line h and k are the same distance from 0. Write an equation to express the value of h plus k. So they're basically saying h plus k equals what? Well, here we don't know what h and k are, right? But we do know that h and k, it's the same distance from 0. So let's just say k is 8. So that means it's 8 steps away from 0. So what does h have to be? It has to be negative 8 because it's on the left side, right? And it's also 8 steps from 0. So all we know is that these two numbers, h and k, they're opposites because they're the same distance from 0. So again, let me give you another example. Let's say k is 10. That means h is negative 10 because 10 and negative 10 are both 10 steps away from 0. Alright, real quick, number 4. During a football game, Kevin gained 5 yards on the first play, then he lost 7 yards on the second play. How many more yards does Kevin need on the next play to get back to where the team started? So, real quick, let's say 0, he gains 5, right? So he's at 5. Then he lost 7, so you go back 7. Where would he end up? 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, negative 1, negative 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 7 back. But if this is where he started at 0, right? That was kind of sloppy. He started at 0. The question is asking, how many more yards does he need to get back to where he started? This is where he started at 0. So if he gained 5 on the first play, and then lost 7 on the second play, how far back is he? He's here at -2, right? So how much more until he gets back to 0? There's 2 steps, right? 1, 2. So the answer for that one would be 2. And again, if you guys got any questions, if I didn't explain that well, maybe you could pause the video, someone could volunteer a better way to explain it if I explain it too fast or something, or if the sub wants to try to explain it again, or yeah, or if you want to just rewind that little part, we could do that also if you want to hear it again. Last question: write an addition number sentence that corresponds to the arrows below. So here, I know it's not colored on yours, so it's kind of harder, but remember, we all start at 0, right? What did the first arrow take us? Or where does it take us? It takes us to 10. So the first number is 10. And if you're at 10, where's the next arrow? It's that green one, right? It takes you back 5. So if you're going back 5, what are we adding? We're going to the left 5, so we're adding -5. Then after that, we go back 5 more to the left, right? So again, we're going to the left, so we're adding negative. Where do we end up? We end up right where we started, right? We end up at 0, so our answer is equal to 0. So hopefully that kind of helped you guys out on the homework. Make sure you write down anything you didn't already. I won't always do this. There's going to be some times where I will go over it to help you guys out, but other times you guys will have to do it on your own if you haven't already. Good job to everyone who did it already. Props to you guys. But right now, I'm going to have you guys go to lesson 2. So that is, let me see. This will be page 13. Alright, so again, on page 13, I'm gonna give you guys about, let's try to give the timer for, have a timer for about 2.5 minutes to just do questions A and B. So we could pause the video here so the students can try to do problem A and B on their own, and then we'll go over it. Alright, so hopefully you guys were able to do that. I'll go over it real quick. Suppose you received $10 from grandmother for your birthday. Let's see. You spent $4 on snacks using addition. Key thing here says using addition. How would you write an equation to represent the situation? So you received $10. Remember, positive numbers represent gaining money or getting money. Received means get, right? So you got 10. So you spend $4. It's like you lose money. So remember, negative numbers represent losing money. So it'd be plus -4, like that. Some of you guys wrote 10 minus 4 maybe, but technically that works. But here it says using addition, so I guess technically that would be wrong for this problem because it says using addition. And this is writing equation, so we gotta write an equals whatever it equals. I'll write that after we do the number line. So remember, we start at 0 on the number line. The first number is 10, so I go from 0 all the way to 10. The 10 tells me to take 10 steps to the right. The second number is -4. That doesn't mean I go to -4, right? It means I go back 4 steps. So 1, 2, 3, 4. But I'll draw it like this. Oh, that's how you're supposed to draw it for now. Right, so our answer is 6. That makes sense, right? You got $10, you spend 4, that means you have 6. Alright, but if you guys can kind of see this, it looks kind of sloppy. And it's kind of, it's a little sloppy and kind of hard to read. I'm going to give you another example of those arrows. So if you look at the problem set we just did for number 5, without the colors on there, it looks really sloppy, right? You guys probably had trouble figuring out what the arrows meant. With the colors, it helps it out a little bit, but still kind of hard to read because all the arrows overlap. So I want to go over a different way to do these arrows that make problems a lot easier. So we're going to skip the bottom, and I'm going to have to actually go to page 14. And on page 14, I'm going to have you guys go ahead and write -2 plus 3 at the very top. If I write that at the top, that's a problem we're going to do on this number line. We're not going to do it with those curved arrows, though. We're going to do it with something called vectors. This here is a vector. Vector is basically, it's like an arrow, but it only has that on one side. Sometimes this would be like a line, but a vector would just be where it's going in a direction. Like this one's going to the right, this one's going to the left, right? Okay, so if I'm doing -2 plus 3 again, we always start at 0, right? First number is -2, so I'm going to draw an arrow from 0, go back 2. And I want you guys, the really important thing here is write that number on top of it. Just it's like you're labeling that arrow as -2. And the next number is 3. That means I go 3 spaces to the right. This part here, I'm just going to show you guys. I don't want you guys to write this part. It's just helping us count it together. 1, 2, 3. All right, so we know we're going to end up at 1. But I want to draw that arrow like this. This arrow represents 3, right? And I want you guys always to circle the number you end up on. So our answer is 1. So right here, you go ahead and put equals 1. So by the end of today, you guys should all be able to do this part. Some of you guys already got a good idea. Some of you guys a little confused. That's okay. We'll do some more examples. So here, -2 plus 3 is 1. Then underneath it, we're looking now at part G. That was part F. Part G says to repeat the same process that I just did with you guys, but we're doing 3 plus -2. So here I'll start at 0, I go to the right 3 spaces. I'm at 3, right? Put that 3 there. The second arrow is -2, that means I go back 2 spaces. Like that. And where do we end up? We end up at 1. Just like before, right? So question H says, what can you say about the sum of -2 plus 3 and 3 plus -2? Remember, the sum is just like the answer to the addition problem. So what do you notice about the answers to both of these problems? We notice that we both end up at 1, right? So it says, does order matter when adding numbers? You guys should have learned this a long time ago. When you do 3 plus 5, it's the same as 5 plus 3, right? It works for negative numbers also. So here I'm just going to write the answer out, and you guys will copy it down also. So we get -1 for both problems. So we get -1 for both problems, right? So we can say order does not, let's underline not, it does not matter when adding negatives. Well, it doesn't matter for adding any numbers, but specifically, even if we got negative numbers, it doesn't matter what order we got it in. We should get the same answer. And this is called it's a property for this. Let's see if anybody knows what it starts with C. Commutative property. So the commutative property basically states that however you add two numbers, it doesn't matter the way you add them, or if you switch the numbers around, you get the same answer. Alright. So I'm going to have you guys actually go ahead and go to page 15. And we're going to be looking at exercise 2. She has to do those two bottom problems, just like the way we did those what we just did earlier, I guess. So yeah, this is page 15, where like this is the bottom half. Do the same vectors, those arrows, those straight arrows, they're called vectors. Do the same thing we did for A and B. So pause the video for maybe 2-3 minutes. Make sure you guys do the exact same thing. Circle your answer, right? Try to do that. Alright, so hopefully we paused the video and you guys were able to do those on your own. And you guys can kind of check the answers we got up here. So first one's -6 plus 4. Again, we start at 0. I draw an arrow from 0 to -6. Make sure you label it. The second number is 4, so that means I go, since it's positive, I go to the right 4. Remember, I start wherever my first arrow ends. Or wherever the last arrow ended, I start there. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4. And where do we end up? -2. Raise your hand if you got -2 as your answer. I'm envisioning I see a bunch of hands up because you guys all got that. Good job, everyone. Alright, real quick. Next one, 3 plus -8. Again, I start at 0. I go to the right 3. Make sure you label that 3 there. Second number is -8. So in this case, I go back 8 spaces. If you want, again, you can kind of just count on your own first before you draw the arrow. So one important thing that a lot of people mess up on. I'm at 3 here, right? You don't count this as 1. You don't do 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? You start at 3, right? Or we're at 3. Our first step is the first number that we take. So that's 1. I'm trying to think of the best way to explain it. If I'm at 3, I don't count until I take my first step. So I'm at here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we should end up at -5. But again, I want you guys to do that, those arrows like this. Make sure you circle your answer. Alright, so let's see. Alright, so I want you guys to look at page 16. Let's we can pause the video for about 5 minutes. And I'll have you guys try to do as many of questions A through F based on this diagram here as you can. A through F. Some of the problems are pretty easy. Some of them are a little confusing the way it's worded. Just try your best to do as many of those questions as possible. If you're not sure on one, you skip it. But you guys need to be working quietly during these 5 minutes. If you're done, you could check with the person next to you. But I shouldn't be hearing a lot. Or, like I said, no way I could be hearing a lot of talking, but the sub should not be hearing a lot of talking. So work on that. Alright, so hopefully you guys have 5 minutes there to complete as much of those questions as you can. So I'll go through these real quick. Question A is write an equation to express the sum. So right here you got 3 arrows, right? So that means you know you're adding 3 numbers. The first arrow is the bottom one, so it's 5. So we're at 5 plus what? What's the second number? -2. What's the third number? That +3, right? And remember, an equation has an equal sign. So what is it equal? Where does the last arrow end? Remember, the last arrow ends wherever my answer is. So that's 6. The answer is 6. Question B says, what 3 cards are represented in this model? Basically, what 3 numbers, right? So that one's pretty, I know it sounded a little confusing, so you're probably a little confused on it. But it's basically asking what are the numbers we're adding. Those are the numbers. And question C is, in what ways does this model differ from the ones we used lesson 1? So real quick, remember, this is what we did for lesson 1. We drew those arrows like this. How is this one better than what we did on the previous lesson? like I said earlier, right? It's a lot neater. You can easily see what numbers you're adding, and you can see the order of the numbers you're adding, right? The first number is the bottom number. Second number is the middle number. Third number is the top number. Make sure you write something like that there. It's a lot clearer and easier to understand. Alright, question D. Can you make a connection between the sum of 6 and where the third arrow ends on the number line? Here you notice the third arrow ends at 6, right? And that's where sum is. So you could say the final arrow ends at what the sum is, or what the answer is. I'll repeat that. The third arrow ends at what the answer is, or what the sum is. Alright, question E. With the sum change, did we change the orders in which we added the numbers? So what if it was negative 2 plus 3 plus 5? No, man. So I'm just quickly go over this. If you switch the numbers around, we talked about that earlier in the lesson. If you switch the numbers around, you're going to get the same answer if you're adding, right? It doesn't matter the order. So you just say no. Order does not matter. When adding. Question F, would the diagram change? The diagram, however, would change. I'll show you guys real quick. In this case, if it was negative 2 plus 3 plus 5, you go back 2 first, go forward 3, and go forward 5. Still end up at the same number, right? But the diagram will look different. To say yes, the arrows will look different, right? Alright, let's see. Let's see what I want to go over with you guys to finish off. Go to page 18. Actually, scratch that. Your homework, if you guys probably have some time in class right now, is just going to be, and you guys will see the homework show up in Google Classroom also, but your homework will be page 17. So it's just numbers 1 through 3 on that. And let's see here. Some extra credit opportunities for you guys. Always asking for extra credit. Page 18. If you take a picture of page 18, I'll give you a few extra credit points. We'll take a picture of page 18 with the work done. All right. So right now, I want you guys to all work on page 17, depending on how much time is left in class. You guys should be working till the end of class. I'll post the assignment for you guys to take a picture of it and post it. All right. Have a good rest of your day. You guys will hear from me tomorrow. Bye.